And it was on this day, the 20th of July in 2021, that I finished Year of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, and therefore I finished the Mistborn trilogy. I finished this about, by now, like 8 or so minutes ago. So it hasn't sunk in all that much. Hold up, 1 second. My laptop's being loud. I haven't sat down and taken everything in yet. I wanted to do a review right off the bat because I want to have it fresh in my mind, and then I want to be able to sit down and just soak in completing the book for a while. This is the first time in a review that I actually have a list of things I'm going to talk about, so hopefully I won't ramble. So, for the non-spoiler part, I don't really know what to put this. I'm basically going to go in chronological order, but it isn't quite like that. First thing I was going to say is that I started off the book feeling very slow. Now, there's 2 reasons for this. One is that I have read a lot of fantasy fighting books in a row. So when the actual fighting in Mistborn came up, which comes up pretty quick in the book, that was a slog for me because I've read too many in a row and I need a break. And I know that now. So that's part of why I was super slow. Entirely not the book's fault, that's me. On the other hand, I do think the plot did progress rather slow in the beginning for a fair while, but the point in which, nope, can't talk about that, non-spoilers. The point in which we meet another plot line is when it actually picks up the pace. So it felt pretty slow, but there was a point in which it picked up the pace. Because it was feeling slow, though, I did the audiobook after chapter 18. So chapter 18 was the first chapter I did the audiobook for, and I highly recommend the audiobook. It's actually really good. The audiobook can actually give away some things with the voice. Not that much, just like one really tiny thing, because they do the voice for an unknown character, and you can link the voice to the character's voice. But also, there were still some questions regarding it. It's my only comment about the audiobook, but I do recommend the audiobook. It's really good, and it gives a little bit more life into some things. As I said, it began to pick up and catch on, started to get my attention. I started binge listening to it whenever I could. Usually a binge listen is like 2 to 3 hours for me because I'm usually doing other things at the same time, and there's only so many things I can do that don't require listening to other things. So, I started binge listening. Yesterday I listened to about 4 hours worth, and today I listened to 5.5 hours worth. So the end really got me, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't put the book down. So obviously that's a really good thing. In general, I loved the epitaphs. I think that's what they're called. It's like the little paragraph before every chapter. The epitaphs, even early on, are part of what catch the interest of the reader. I think it's because they're feeding you information, right? Like every epitaph is like giving you information and stuff that you're not really coming across with the characters. So it catches your intrigue each time with like a new factoid or something. And maybe it's something that you're not interested in, or maybe it's something that they're repeating what they already said earlier, but even so, there's plenty of them that, like, when you just pick up a chapter and you start with the epitaph, it's like a prelude to the chapter. You're, like, getting ready for it. Also, sometimes the epitaph links to the last chapter, and so it's really, really cool to listen to the last chapter's, like, big reveal and then have the epitaph explain what the big reveal was. So I really liked those. I'm sorry if it's not called an epitaph. Fitting in with that, I was originally a mystery reader. That was my first genre. Actually, it was my second genre. My first genre was historical fiction. But this book kind of has elements of both. I wouldn't say it's a mystery book, but what I mean is, as a mystery reader, I love it when there's like reveals that I could not have predicted, but could be picked out. Like if you were really, really smart and you're really thinking outside the box, you can maybe figure it out, but it's really hard to. I love it when authors have those like really hard things to solve, but it's technically possible. This book has so many of those, and I was loving it the whole time. There were, like, in the middle, maybe, a lot of them were predictable. I was seeing a lot of things before they came, and I was, like, getting worried that it was going to be like that. And then just the wall of information came, and a lot of things got unpredictable really quick. So I really like that. I spend a lot of time when I'm listening coming up with theories in my head as I'm listening or reading. That's just part of my mystery reader habits. Sometimes it will ruin something if I already saw it coming for a long time. But if I don't see something coming, it becomes that much more satisfying. So I really liked a lot of the reveals that just pop out at you sudden, and they just, I don't know how to convey it, man. They were really good. Some of them were really, really good. Very enjoyable. Next, here's the other thing about being able to predict things in the epitaphs, is that dramatic irony, excuse my language, is a bitch. Okay? The thing that comes with the epitaphs and figuring out stuff is that sometimes the characters don't know something, or the characters know something, but they just can't link the two things that you already did link together, and you're just like, figure it out already! Because, you know something that the characters don't. Very annoying. Like, it's an amazing device for authors. And I don't know how to convey the feeling. Like, I'm not upset at the author for using dramatic irony. I'm upset at the characters for being idiots. Or I'm upset that it just couldn't be. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, dramatic irony is like amazing. It's a great device to use, and it is enjoyable after you get over the screaming about it. After you're angry about it, you enjoy it. That's what I kind of mean. So there were a lot of times where the dramatic irony, I was just like, Vin, you idiot, or Ellen, you idiot, or any of the characters, you're an idiot. It happens a lot. And sometimes it's not the characters being idiots, sometimes it's just like, I really wish these two characters knew the information that these characters knew, because then all of this would be fine. But no, all of the different characters have different pieces of information, and that's just part of how everything comes together. And again, in the end, it works out perfectly. But along the journey, dramatic irony is a bitch. And I just want to say that. And it was amazingly used by the author. It really kept you in the story in the way that you felt emotions towards the book. The last two things, my non-spoiler section, which I'm going to start doing, even though it's really hard to, is favorite character and rating. Disclaimer, I usually don't do favorite characters, and I never do ratings. I will give an estimate rating sometimes if people ask, but usually my rating changes like 12 times over time. So, for now, what I will say is that my favorite character in all of the Mistborn series is Ellen. I will explain why a little bit in the spoiler section briefly. And the rating I'd give, if we're on Goodreads and you can only do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would do 5. It will be on my favorite books list. I have a list of, I think it's 6 or so books on my favorite book list on Goodreads, and this will be added onto it. Keep in mind that most of those books are from Dresden. I have multiple from one series. I know it's cheating. Actually, I have 8 books on my favorite shelf right now, but basically, this is going to be on my favorite shelf. If it's Goodreads, I'll give it 5 stars. If I actually need to predict where it is on the star scale, the books I compare it to, it's a little hard. It doesn't compare in some ways, in other ways it does. So what I will say is a 4.8, but don't rely on my rating. I'm just putting it out there for people who want to know what I would give it. It's not a character-driven story, is what I do want to say. I don't think, maybe the first book in this series, The Last Empire, maybe that's a little bit character-driven, but books 2 and 3, I feel like the character part kind of fell away, especially with book 3, and the plot and the world building really carried it a lot. So that's my opinion, but most of the books I read are like character stories. Like almost every fantasy book I've ever read has been a character-driven story. And so this is a first for me, having one that I actually didn't like most of the characters. But it still was really, really good. The world building was it's perfect. The world building was perfect. So, yeah. And in Sanderson's lectures, he talks about that. There's basically 3 things, and if you have 2 out of the 3, you got a good story. One of the 3 is characters, you have world building, which includes the setting, and then you have the plot. And if you have 2 out of the 3 good, you have a solid story, and that's exactly what he has. So, that's the reason for my rating, and the reason why my favorite character is Elend. That is it for non-spoilers. I will now go into spoilers in 3, 2, 1. We are now in the spoiler section. Why is Elend my favorite character? I kind of touched on it there, but a lot of the characters I just couldn't grow attached to. And the character I liked for the longest period was Elend. Because of the dramatic irony and because I'm a bit picky, and maybe because I'm a know-it-all, and maybe I'm rude. I don't know. It might just be part of my personality, but it was really easy for me to get angry at some characters for being stupid. Vin was stupid a lot. She was just not that smart sometimes. So, whoops. But I couldn't like her because she kept making a lot of dumb decisions and mistakes. And I get that she's supposed to be young. Keep in mind, I read the first book when I was her age, which is a while ago now, but I just couldn't like her that much. A lot of the other characters weren't on page long enough, like Ham. I bet if we saw Ham a lot more, I would love Ham. But in the end, we didn't see him that much overall. You can't bring yourself to like Breeze after a particular reveal. I mean, you know, the reveal gets explained and all that, but I just can't like Breeze just because of the reveal from Well of Ascension with Alriane. I can never pronounce character names. So I just couldn't like Breeze. I like Yeoman. I really, really like Yeoman, but we only saw him in book 3 for a short time, you know? So the amount of time someone's on screen and the amount of times that they messed up significantly enough to anger me really fluctuated a lot of the characters. But Elend has been solid for me since the beginning of Well of Ascension. I have liked Elend for a long time now. I thought Vin was an idiot for trying to court Elend back in book 1, and that was the reason why I didn't like Elend, was because Vin was being stupid. But ever since Well of Ascension, I have always liked him, and he has his moments, but overall he's been an amazing character, and he really grew, I think, is the other part. He's one of the characters that grew the most. He had some of the most change go on with him. So he was not a static character. He was a very round character with a beautiful arc. And so Ellen's my favorite. Next, I'm going to talk about Tensoon really quick. Tensoon is a very interesting character, and that was nowhere near what I expected for his plot. Back in like the beginning chapters, it's within the first 5 chapters, I think, we get introduced to the Tensoon plot, where he's just in a prison. None of what came from that plot was what I expected. I had no idea what was going to be going on with like the Kandra Empire. I know that's the wrong word, but like I had no idea what the homeland of the Kandra was going to be like. And there was all these reveals with race and knowledge and stuff. All this hidden knowledge that was collected from the race that has lasted the longest and actually kept track of what they remember the most. Other than, I guess, the Terracemen, you could argue. But technically, the Kandra are Terracemen. So, that's a late reveal in the book. But there you have it. So, Tensoon and the Kandra and that plot really brought forth a lot of the world building. It really dived into the races some more, which learning about the races was really, really interesting. Obviously, Kandra is one of those. The Kalos, the Inquisitors. Sometimes I'll mix Inquisitor and Obligator. I'm sorry if I've mixed them again, but I think it's Inquisitor, ? I think. I might have it flipped. But in general, just the Tensoon plot, and also just all the learning of like the races and the hemalurgic spikes and all of that stuff was really, really interesting. The little factoids about like the difference between Ska and like the like the non-Ska. There was like an entire debate about that in book 1, and it came back. The explanation of why the people weren't quite human, but they were close. The mist wraiths, all of it was really, really interesting, and I like how it came out bit by bit along the way, but it like coalesced together eventually. I really liked the Yeoman plot. The fact that they were still doing balls was really interesting, and, you know, Vin and Ellen having their first dance. I need to say that it is hard for an author to get me to like a romantic scene. It is really hard. I'm very judgmental towards it. I don't know why, I just am. So, Codex Alera got me once, maybe twice, but I would argue once it got me the romantic scene. And that dance did get me. It was well done. So, I will admit to liking that scene. Again, it's kind of hard to get me to do that. But, you know, the ball, like how smart Yeoman is, how dumb Vin is, but, you know, we could come back to how dumb Vin is later. Just, he was a really interesting character, and I love the verbal debates between Ellen and Yeoman. Like, it was I got attached to him quick, even though we only saw him for a short amount of time on page. And he's just so reserved. He's one of those characters that you don't get to see as often as other characters. If you create a list of archetypes that each of the characters are, Ham is the philosopher, Breeze is the cliche, pretending to be bad, but he's actually a good guy, but he wants to be better than everybody else kind of guy. You know, you could archetype a lot of the characters. If you archetyped Yeoman, I think he's one of those characters that you do not get to see that often when reading stories. It depends what you read, obviously, but when I read books, I don't really come across a character like Yeoman. So I did really like him. Just how reserved, logical, straightforward he is, but at the same time, I don't really know how to explain it. I think he was a really good balance. So the entire part of it where it was like Ellen versus Yeoman, and they were infiltrating the city and trying to think around that was really good. I don't know how I feel about Ellen going to get more colas, try to charge, and all of that. But I have the hiccups, sorry. Came out of nowhere. I don't know how I feel about that part of it, where it became a fight. But up until it became a fight, I really liked that. Comments about the preservation of ruin balance. We learned about ruin, and we kind of had an idea about ruin for a while now, but then the piece of preservation slid in during the epitaphs, and we started to like understand what was going on, and that was really good. Again, that's one of those things where like we learned bits at a time, and some of those, like one sentence or maybe 2 words worth of information would make us go, oh no, and like pull our hair out and freak out, which is always amazing if an author can do that. But like gathering those pieces of information and figuring the puzzle out and stuff like that is really good, like really good. And just figuring out like how things work along the way. I think the balance is really good, and the comments about the pushing and pulling and consequence. I thought consequence would come up a little bit more than it did. The mentions of how Rashek experienced consequence makes sense, but you know, just even without like the consequence coming up as much as I thought, just having the balance and the argument between the two come up and show like how the power fluctuates. Sometimes maybe I would like be like, okay, I get that they're equal in power right now, but shrug. But other times it was just really, really addicting to find those pieces of information. It makes you just want to keep reading. So in the end, having completed the book, I really, really like that balance. Even if there were some parts where I was just like, okay, you kind of mentioned this already. The Say's plotline. This is something I talked about in my Well of Ascension review. My Well of Ascension review wasn't my most positive review ever. And again, that was back before these reviews were actually formal, so I kind of ranted a lot about the whole Zane plot. I'm sorry. But foregoing that, one of the things I mentioned in my review of Well of Ascension is that Say's kind of lost my opinion at the end of it. I thought Say's was being a little bit foolish, and I know why, and I get he has a lot of character reason behind it. I get that. Like, I get that that's a very significant moment, and that I would not understand that for sure, because, you know, I haven't necessarily lost anyone close to me, and I definitely didn't lose anyone close to me in a fight, but he lost my opinion at the end. However, despite that, in this book, you know, he was trying to, like, figure out all the religions, and some of that I was just like, shrug. Some of it was interesting, like when he read the nature religion, I was like, I bet this is gonna come up later, and it did. And eventually, Say's accesses copper mines again, and that moment I was like, yes, this is the Say's I missed. Seeing some of his personality come back and see him be a little bit less dead was very enjoyable, and that's the point. So he did come back as a character, and I did end up liking him again a lot. But there was this U shape, if this is Well of Ascension, and this is the part where I started liking him, and then there's this middle bit that I didn't like him as much. So that's why he isn't my favorite character, but in the end he searches all those religions, and he starts to get like addicted to research and becoming the scholar again. I love scholar characters. You noticed I like Ellen. I really love scholar characters. So seeing him become a scholar again and find out, oh no, I forgot the terrorist religion, and he goes to learn about the terrorist religion. From the point he gets his copper mines, a little bit before that, onward, it was really good, and I love Sayst. He would probably be number 2 behind Ellen if I had to choose one. It's a hard fight. But the Say's plotline and the reveal with all of the religions having a bit of information, all of them having some truth, was really good. I love how that was done. The ATM loop around, And this kind of connects with how the religion that he studied back in book 1 and started preaching all comes back around. The atium from book 1, which initiated basically the entire story, looped all the way back around to having a super significant role. We don't know, I don't think we know, it's possible I missed it, we don't know how Kelsier learned about any of this. I have a theory that Kelsier had ruin in him. Don't know how, but I have a theory that Kelsier, who was considered insane, had like a bit of ruin in him, maybe showed up as mayor, and maybe that's how he knew some of the processes, with like the 11th metal and the ATM cache and all that, but I don't actually know. That's just a theory I have, and it's possible I missed the truth, but I don't know. But I mean, in the end, Kelsier knew about the ATM cache, and that's why he initiated the whole rebellion back in book 1, the heist. And I love how it came back in book 3 to be like Ruin's body, and they used up all the ATM, and he's like, Ellen's like final we won ha moment was really good. So again, I think that's also part of my mystery reader enjoyment, but just in general, having things loop back around is very satisfying. And then more things that looped around and got revealed. The earring. Vin's earring was a freaking amazing reveal. That might be my favorite reveal. Okay. Vin's earring reveal might be my favorite reveal. It's very, very high on the list if it's not the highest. Just figure, like, that moment in which you're like, oh, it's every time she didn't have the earring on. I never saw that coming. I never thought about the earring. I thought it was just like a mother's thing and that it didn't matter. And even though the author clearly stated Vin didn't know why she kept wearing the earring, she just did. It feels so obvious now. But I never saw it coming, and then it got revealed, and I was like, oh! It was really good. So I think that one's the one that got the most reaction out of me for sure, was when I figured out the earring. Also, that fight was intense. Just quick side comment. Very intense. The prophecy loop around, it turns out Ruin's leading everybody, but in the end it was actually Perseverance using Ruin to lead everybody. Did I say Perseverance? Close enough. Preservation. Leading, like, being a few steps ahead of Ruin, and that was really good. Having the Lord Ruler actually be the one planning to save everybody. Like, the Lord Ruler had part of Ruin in him, and that's why he did all these bad actions, but also having Preservation help the Lord Ruler to prepare for everything. And in the end, the Lord Ruler was a good person. He just did not seem like in the first book for, you know, because of Ruin. So, having that loop around where we learned about the Lord Ruler and what he was thinking and why he struggled a lot was really good. Having, you know, the obligators and stuff loop around, having things even just in Hero of Ages itself loop around, like the atium that Yeoman had on his forehead. Like, he was just like, having him be an atium misting and having him only have the 7 beads, which like tricked Ruin and Vin and Ellen. Those tiny things were also really good. The mist, like, every time Vin used the mist, it's like, why could she do it? And I never had any theories about that, to be honest. I just was like, I guess Perseverance was in the mood to help you. And back before I knew his Perseverance, I was like, I guess the mist just wanted to help you. And then I just had a weird thought, sorry. And then, you know, there's the second time it happens, and you're just like, what is different? And then, of course, it turns out to be the earring. But, you know, I love how it kept you thinking. Also about the mist, when when Vin took in all the mist and the mist turned out to be perseverance. I said perseverance again. Preservation, I'm sorry. The mists were preservation, and explains why the mists were close to some people and away from others, and all of that was really good. And how the mists like helped cool everything down. The mists were like helping people last longer. Everything about the mists basically is what I'm saying. I like how all of it was incorporated, and it mattered on multiple scales and multiple different levels. And just in general, all of that was really well done. I guess the last thing I'll say is that sometimes Vin was an idiot. My friends will tell you, I have like 3 or so friends that have seen me over the series. I have 3 or so people who have been following me as I've been reading this series, and they will tell you that I sometimes screamed a little bit about Vin or another character, but mostly Vin making some very poor decisions. Before she does them, I could see that she was making a poor decision, and, you know, that was like one of my blockades to the series. One of the things I didn't like so much, but obviously you can't have characters that are smart and make good decisions all the time. I just thought she was a bit too short-sighted. But, you know, I've read it now, and I realize it isn't really a character-driven story. I get that some people might get attached to some of the characters, but I don't really see that for me. The character I got most attached to is Ellen, and I'm not, like, overly attached to him. I'm not, like, freaking out like Harry, I guess, if we wanted to bring Dresden into this. The main character of Dresden is a lovable, adorable, amazing character, and that's why there's a fuck ton of fan fiction for Dresden, is because all of the characters are just lovable, and they're amazing characters. This series I cannot say the same for, in my opinion, but it stuck out in every other way, and the ending was beautiful. It's not what I expected. I thought the ending was going to be like a disaster, surprise, oh my god ending, but it ended up being like a beautiful ending. That was not what I expected. I thought it was going to be like a not happy ending, but it was like a really happy ending, and it ended up being Earth and all of that. I really, really liked that. So that's all I have to say about Hero of Ages. I highly recommend this book. You do have to get through the other 2 books first. Definitely read them in order. You're crazy if you don't read them in order. Read them in order. People who read out of order. Anyway, highly recommend this book. Could start out a little bit slow, but it picks up the pace. Now, welcome back, non-spoiler people, to the section where I talk about what books I bought recently. Well, I only have 4 new physical books, and I have a few online books that are going to be a pain to show you. I am sorry ahead of time. Book number 1 that I bought recently came out in paperback about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now actually. Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio. It is the 3rd book of Sun Eater. The 4th book is coming out March of next year, I believe. I don't know when I'll read this series, to be honest. I might start it soon, but it's an ongoing series, and so there's some things to weigh about that. But about this book, it is freaking huge. I don't know if this conveys how big this book is, but this book is about 900.5 pages paperback with tiny text. Like, that is super tiny text for a book that's that tall. So it's big enough to not hurt the eyes, but it is definitely small text. The Mistborn books had super small text, and that's one of the reasons why I was loathing to read those copies. They aren't well printed, to be honest. But book 3. And then the other 3 books I bought are a trilogy. Whoop! Alright, so if you don't recognize this trilogy, this is the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. And I just want to say that they have beautiful covers and show you the covers really quick. This is the book 3 cover. The book 2 cover. And the book 1 cover. These were expensive books, to be honest. But they do look really good on the shelf. So if you collect books and like a pretty shelf, these will tempt you, I believe. I guess it depends on your taste, but I really like these covers. I think these covers really do sell the books. And I am very excited to read First Law. I don't think I've read Grimdark technically. I've read things that touch on it and get close. And in general, I don't mind Grimdark movies and stuff. So I'm sure I will enjoy it. Don't know when I'll read it, but I am excited to. Soon. So those are my only physical books. If you'll bear with me a moment, I'll get the not physical books. Takes me a bit of time to load these up sometimes. So I might have shown this one before. I don't actually know, so I'm sorry if I already have. But I got Spellmonger. Gosh, this is always a pain. I'm sorry. There we go. Spellmonger. This is the first book of the Spellmonger series. I think the first book's just called Spellmonger? ? My friend told me to get this, and they highly recommended it, and it was on sale, so I did. But I don't know if I'll be reading that anytime soon. Shrug. The next book I got is Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. I actually own Age of Myth and Age of Death by Michael J. Sullivan. I haven't read them, and I am glad I haven't, because the same friend recommended me this series, and they explained to me that the books I already own are the prequel series, and that you should read Rhaenyra, I don't know how to say it, Revelations first. So, I will now be reading Rhaenyra Revelations first. I also have the audiobook form of this. I have the Kindle and the audiobook. She told me the audiobook's really good, and I'm taking her word for it. So I have both. So I have that. Along the same lines, I have The Jester, which is a short story that kind of gives a feel for that series. So I'll be listening to that tonight after this recording. Next book, this one I also may have shown, but I don't think I have. Pushing Ice by Alastair Reynolds. It was on sale, so I went ahead and got it. And also by Alastair Reynolds is Century Reign. Century Reign sounded really, really interesting when I read the idea and stuff behind it. So I am excited for this one. I don't actually remember if Century Reign is a standalone or if it's part of the series. I know Pushing Ice is a part of a series. I'm going to have to do research on that. But House of Suns, which is the other Alastair Reynolds book I own, which I have in a physical copy, that one's a standalone. So you might be seeing that soon. And I believe that's all the books I have. Yep, that's it. And I already talked about The Jester. So there we go. And now for the section where I talk about what I'm reading next. Well, I'm going to listen to The Jester tonight, as I said. Ooh, I'm getting tired, sorry. And then what? Well, see, that's a good question. I'm struggling a little bit choosing. I need to take a fantasy break, and I am, for sure. I am probably either going to return to the Journeyer, which is the most likely option. I'm probably going to take Journeyer with me on my week-long trip that starts in a few days. But after my break, it's going to be Journeyer or The Martian, or another book I have on the Kindle. I'm going to do a Kindle book. After I take whatever my break book is, though, I was planning on diving into Powder Mage. Don't know how long that'll take. I think the books fly by according to the 2 people I've talked to them about the book. But Powder Mage is very interesting. I noticed a lot of people... I don't know what I was going to say. I've seen a bunch of people like leave reviews about Powder Mage, and I don't mean leave reviews like on Goodreads, because to me that's unreliable. I just mean the reviews of people who enjoyed the book. I want to know what aspects about it they enjoyed. I don't really want to know the opinions of the people who didn't like the book, because the only way I'll know if I don't like the book is if I read it, and that's my approach towards all books, to be honest. I don't think the things that other people disliked will line up with my dislikes, because I'm picky and stuff. But yeah, so it's gonna be Powder Mage, I think. If it's not Powder Mage, though, it's gonna be Faithful and the Fallen or The Expanse. Now, here's the problem with The Expanse. I only own 1 book of The Expanse on paperback. There's only so many books I can take with me when I move, which is in less than a month now. Yes, you have less than a month of seeing me here, and it's entirely possible that the next time I finish a book, I won't be here. I'll either be in a hotel room, or in a cabin, or in my new home, which will be a dorm room. But you will see. It depends how long until I finish my next book. But there's only so many books I can take with me, and I am taking the first book of The Expanse with me. The problem is, if I buy more books of The Expanse, I don't know if I can get them all in paperback. I don't think I have that much space. So that's my problem with The Expanse. And also, the 9th book isn't out yet. I think it's soon. I'm going to Google it really quick. I don't know when it comes out. It's out already. No, it's not. Never mind. Not available for purchase. It says it's a Prime original series. Pre-order. November 16th, 2021. So it comes out this year. Those are the 2 problems with The Expanse. Now, the only reason I would start it is because I've been craving The Expanse for over a year now. For like nearly 2 years now, I've been itching to get my hand on The Expanse, and I still am, and I'm really intrigued, and I'm really excited, and I really want to dive into the space politics and everything. I've heard a lot of things about it. I know some people don't like it, some people adore the show, of course. I don't know how the show will go. A lot of people actually who have read the book said the show is good, which shocks me. I'm not gonna know until I read the books. But that's why I'm doing The Expanse. But for now, I'm going to say Powder Mage or Faithful and Fallen. If I read the Powder Mage trilogy, it's up in the air if I'll do Gods, Blood, and Powder. That depends on my opinion at the end of the Autumn Campaign. Autumn Campaign? Autumn Republic, sorry. I mixed the 2. But yeah. What you may be noticing is that I am not reading Arcanium Unbounded next. I'm going to be leaving my Sanderson books here. I'm sorry. I'm not ready. I'm going to put them off a little bit. Don't know how long that little bit of time is, but I want to get through some of the completed stuff I already own, because I have a lot of completed series I have not touched yet, before I get into the Cosmere, because I don't want to read part of the Cosmere and then go elsewhere and then come back and read a little bit more Cosmere and go elsewhere and come back again, because I'm probably going to have to reread to catch up on things again, which I hear is something that a lot of the people have been having to do each time a new book comes out in Cosmere. They'll have to, I've seen groups of people come together and, throw in all their spoiler information to share to remind. It kind of happens with Dresden, but Dresden is on a much smaller scale, and it's one series that all goes in a pattern. Cosmere is, jumps around with, all these different factors, and Easter eggs and stuff. So, from what I hear, I obviously have only read Mistborn Era 1. But when I feel ready to tackle the Cosmere as a whole, I will be going through all these books. And the order I was told to do was Arcanium Unbounded, Mistborn Era 2, or Warbreaker, and then whichever one I don't do after. I'm probably going to do Era 2, and then Warbreaker, because Era 2 is small. And then Stormlight Archive will come up. Oh boy. I've been told things about Stormlight Archive. Also, Elantris is somewhere in there. I don't actually own Elantris yet. I also don't own Shadows of Self, though, because it hasn't gone on sale, and I've been wanting to go on sale, and it still hasn't. I don't know where Elantris falls in that. I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about Elantris, but, again, I don't really know until I read it. I just don't own it yet, because it's one of those weird books that has multiple versions printed, and I want to make sure I get the right one. And also because I'm trying to avoid buying any more physical books until I've read some more. So for now, these are my physical books. I'll eventually buy those. But yeah, I will not be reading Stormlight Archive next. I'm sorry. One day I shall return though. I believe that's it. So just a really quick summary. Really liked Hero of Ages. I bought the First Law trilogy and the third book of Sun Eater, which means that I now own all of the currently out books of Sun Eater. There's only so many series I'm taking with me. I'm only bringing Aeronauts Windless of the Butcher books with me. I only have Powder Mage, and I am taking Gods of Blood and Powder with me, whether or not I read it. Faithful and the Fallen, The Expanse Book 1, and Farseer and Sun Eater. Those are the only series I'm taking with me when I move to my dorm. So those are the series you'll be seeing in the future. How far in the future? That depends. I'm likely going to read The Journeyer next, or maybe The Martian, or another sci-fi book I have. Maybe historical fiction. We will see. And after that, I'll probably dive into Powder Mage. It's possible that I'll go into Faithful and the Fallen, which is a character-driven series according to what I hear, or I will dive into The Expanse, which is a character-driven world-building, super intriguing, I'm very excited to read series. We will see. Also, by the time I actually start reading The Expanse, the 9th book will be out, so I might actually think about that. That is all I have to say on today, the 20th of July, 2021. Yawn, sorry. So, goodbye. I'm gonna go listen to The Jester now. I'm excited. We'll see. It's possible I'll read Rara Area. Y'all will get an update on that soon. Bye-bye.